Before we dive into tonight's haunting story, be sure to like and subscribe, or you may find yourself wondering if something is watching you. Hit that button if you dare. It was a rainy October evening when I found myself standing in front of the old morgue. The building loomed in front of me like a forgotten sentinel, its crumbling facade masked by overgrown ivy and the thick fog that had begun to roll in. I had heard their rumors whispers in the local diner, late-night stories shared over too many beers that this place was more than just a relic. It was a tomb for things that had never truly left. The morgue had been abandoned for nearly 30 years, and yet it still stood, its windows boarded up, its doors rusted shut. No one had entered in all that time, or so they said. I wasn't the first to venture inside. Many had tried, but few returned. Those who did were never quite the same, their eyes hollow, their voices shaky. I had come here for one reason: to understand, to uncover the truth about the horrors that had happened behind these walls. I wasn't some thrill-seeker looking for a ghost story to tell. I was a journalist, trained to document, to capture what others were too afraid to confront. But nothing in my career had prepared me for what I was about to encounter. The door creaked as I pried it open with my shoulder. It had been forced open before, the metal warped from years of neglect. I stepped into the cold, musty air, feeling the chill creep down my spine as the door groaned shut behind me. The smell hit me first, something foul, stale, a mix of decay and something more sinister, something that shouldn't have been there. The morgue had long been emptied of bodies, or so I thought, yet the air felt thick, heavy, as if it was waiting for me. I pulled my flashlight from my bag and flicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with old autopsy tables, some of them still covered in yellowed cloth, others stripped bare. The floors were covered in dust, but the air was so still it felt like time itself had been frozen here. As I moved further into the room, I noticed something odd. The floors were damp, slick with a substance I couldn't identify. It wasn't water, it was thicker, almost sticky. My stomach turned. I wiped the sweat from my brow, trying to steady my nerves. Just a morgue, I muttered to myself. Though, even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. There was something more to this place, something I couldn't yet understand. I walked past the autopsy rooms, each one dark and silent. But then I saw a door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar. A soft light flickered from within, casting eerie shadows on the walls. It shouldn't have been on. The building had no power. Yet, there it was, glowing faintly, beckoning me forward. My pulse quickened as I approached. I pushed the door open with a groan, the hinges protesting the movement. Inside, the room was colder than the rest of the building. The light came from an old overhead lamp, its bulb flickering intermittently. On the floor was a metal tray, covered by a thin sheet. I hesitated for a moment before pulling it back. My breath caught in my throat. There, lying on the tray, was a body. It was pale, its skin an unnatural shade of gray. The fingers were curled inwards, stiff, and the lips pulled back in a grotesque grimace. It looked like a body that had been dead for years, but the thing that made my blood run cold was the freshness of the wounds. This body was too intact. No signs of decay, no sign that it had been here for years, like everything else. I stumbled back, my heart racing, my head spinning. How could this be? The morgue had been abandoned for decades. No one had been here. No one had used this room for years. Yet, there it was. A body freshly prepared for an autopsy. And then it moved. I froze. My breath hitched in my throat, and I reached for my phone, desperate to call for help, but my hands trembled too violently to dial. The body on the table shifted, its fingers twitching as if responding to some unseen force. I watched, paralyzed, as the thing on the table slowly raised its head, its hollow eyes opening to reveal nothing but darkness. A voice, barely a whisper, scraped across my eardrums. Not, ... I snapped my head around, searching for the source. No one was there. The door was still ajar, the hallway dark and silent, but the voice there was no mistaking it. It came from within the room. I stumbled backward, the cold metal of the wall pressing against my back as I fought to keep my breathing steady. I didn't know what I was dealing with, but I knew this wasn't just a morgue. This place held something beyond the dead. It held the lost, the forgotten. I turned to flee, but the room seemed to stretch, elongating impossibly. The door was no longer visible. Instead, a long corridor opened up before me, stretching deeper into the building. It felt like the walls were shifting, the space warping around me. Panic set in, my mind racing for any escape, and then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Someone or something was coming. My pulse hammered in my chest as I spun around, flashlight in hand, trying to find the exit. But all I could see was the hallway, stretching farther into the darkness, and the faint outline of a figure at the end. "Leave it," said, its voice cold, like ice scraping against my bones. I stumbled forward, my legs giving way beneath me as I scrambled toward the door. The building groaned around me, the walls pressing in, the floors buckling beneath my feet. The figure moved closer, its face just a blur, but I could feel its presence, its eyes boring into me. I didn't look back. I ran, pushing through the door, but it wasn't the same door I had entered through. I was in another part of the building now, and I could feel the darkness closing in around me, the walls shifting, tightening. The morgue, the body, it wasn't just a building anymore. It was alive, it was watching me. I found my way out eventually, clawing my way through the service doors and back into the damp night air. My heart was still pounding, my body trembling with shock. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, slamming the door behind me and speeding away. I never spoke about it, not to anyone, but I still feel it. The cold, the darkness, the whisper in the air. The morgue is still out there, waiting for someone else to come, waiting for someone else to step inside. And when they do, it will remember them, just like it remembered me. The dead don't stay buried. Not in places like that. Some places, some rooms, they never let you go. And sometimes, when you least expect it, they find their way back to you. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to open it, but I did. Slowly, I unzipped the body bag, my hands shaking. Inside was a man, pale, lifeless, but his skin was still soft, his features still intact, as if he had just died. His eyes were closed, but there was something wrong with his expression. Something unsettling about the way his lips were curled, almost as if in a smile. But the smile wasn't welcoming. It was sinister. I backed away from the drawer, my heart hammering in my chest. I checked my phone, no signal. No surprise there. I looked back at the body, unsure what to do. This was wrong. This wasn't just an abandoned morgue. This was something else. But before I could process the thought, I heard it. A soft sound. A whisper. It came from behind me. I spun around, my flashlight beam scanning the room. Nothing. The silence was suffocating, yet the whisper lingered in my mind. I could hear it even now, as if it was just at the edge of my hearing. The hairs on my neck stood on end. I wasn't alone. I turned back to the drawer, and that's when I saw it. The body was gone. My heart stopped. The drawer was empty, but the body bag lay in a heap on the cold floor, its zipper hanging open. I rushed over, my hands trembling as I grabbed the bag and tried to pull it back open. But nothing was inside. The body had vanished, as if it had never been there at all. Panic surged through me. My breathing quickened, and I felt a rising sense of dread, like nothing I had ever experienced. I had to leave. Now I turned and ran for the stairs, but the hallway leading back to the exit was different. The layout had shifted, the walls had changed, the doors were now locked. The air was thicker, heavier. The building seemed to twist around me, its hallways extending farther than they should, its rooms multiplying like a maze. I tried to call for help, but my phone was dead. I couldn't hear anything outside of my own breathing and the soft, distant thrum of something moving in the darkness. I wasn't sure if it was real, but the whispers grew louder, echoing through the empty halls, growing clearer with every step I took. "You shouldn't have come here," the whisper said. I spun around, but no one was there. My pulse pounded in my ears, and I ran. I ran until my legs gave out, my chest burning with each breath. I collapsed against a wall, too afraid to move, too afraid to look. The door to the morgue was back, standing wide open. But now, it was different. The room was no longer cold. It was warm. Warm in a way that made my skin crawl. I couldn't take it anymore. I stumbled outside, gasping for air, and finally saw the street ahead. I didn't stop until I was in my car, driving far away from that place. I never went back. I never will. But every time I close my eyes, I still hear it, the whispers, the ones that told me to stay away, the ones that still echo in the corners of my mind, waiting for me to return. Some places don't stay abandoned. Some places, once you step inside, they never let you go. The first time I heard about the old morgue, it was from a colleague who worked at the nearby hospital. He casually mentioned it. The building had been shut down for years, abandoned, left to rot. But there were stories, rumors, that had been passed on from the old staff. Whispers of things that shouldn't have been left behind. The morgue, they said, was still alive in some way. That was the first warning I ignored. I wasn't a ghost hunter, nor was I looking for anything supernatural. I was a journalist, always looking for the truth in the places others had forgotten. Abandoned places intrigued me more so than any urban legend or viral video could ever hope to. It wasn't the ghosts that drew me in, it was the history, the things hidden in the cracks of time. And so, on an unusually cold evening in late November, I found myself standing in front of the decrepit building, staring at the rusted gates and boarded-up windows. The morgue was in the basement. The hospital had been decommissioned in the 90s. Its morgue sealed off, its halls left to decay with time. I knew better than to go in without preparation. I had my flashlight, my camera, and most importantly, my trusty respirator to deal with the damp, moldy air. I had no intention of staying long. Just document what was left behind, take a few photos, and leave. That was my plan. The first thing I noticed as I entered was the smell stale air mixed with decay and something metallic. The building was eerily silent, save for the occasional creak of the old structure settling. The dim light from my flashlight flickered on the cracked walls, illuminating the faded signs and the old, rotting furniture left behind. The place was too quiet, too still. There was something unnatural about it. I descended the staircase that led to the morgue, the metal steps groaning under my weight. My heart pounded harder the further I went. I had to admit, there was an undercurrent of unease starting to sink into my bones, but I told myself it was just the dark corners and the stories I had heard. I wasn't going to let fear control me. At the bottom of the stairs, the morgue doors stood ajar. The metal was rusted, but the hinges still creaked as I pushed them open. The morgue looked like it had been abandoned in a hurry. The autopsy tables, stripped of any equipment, were pushed against the walls. There were large, cold storage units, but the most chilling thing was the air cold, unnaturally cold. Even in the basement, in a building without power, it was far too cold. It wasn't the damp chill of old concrete. It was something else, something ... deliberate. I approached one of the cold storage units, my breath fogging in front of me despite the lack of heating. The drawers were all sealed, but one was slightly ajar. I pulled it open, half expecting to find nothing but dust and decay. Instead, what I found made my stomach twist. Inside the drawer lay a body, wrapped in a black body bag. There was no sign of the usual disarray or degradation you'd expect from something left abandoned for decades. This body was fresh. It hadn't been here long, and there was no identifying label, no paperwork. The body bag was new, not aged or decayed. I stared at it for a long moment, my flashlight trembling in my hand. My breath came faster, a sudden wave of panic washing over me. I never believed in ghost stories, not really. Sure, I'd heard them, like everyone else. Rumors passed down from older employees. The stories shared over coffee in dimly lit break rooms. But those were just stories. People loved to exaggerate. When I was hired as a custodian at the county morgue, I figured it was like any other job. Long hours, monotony, and the occasional creepy basement. After all, it was just a building, or so I thought. It was an old place, built back in the early 60s, and it had been in use until the early 2000s. Over the years, it had become more of a storage facility for bodies than anything else. Most of the rooms were abandoned or locked up, but the basement still had all the old refrigeration units. They had stopped using them when the new morgue opened, but the place had a strange feeling too. It one I couldn't shake. At first, the weirdness didn't bother me. It was the smell that got to me first. The sharp scent of disinfectant mingled with something earthy. Something almost metallic. But I had grown used to it. What bothered me, though, were the cold spots. Every night, as I walked through the hallways, I would come across areas where the temperature would drop inexplicably, like a sudden draft sweeping through an otherwise still air. But I ignored it, just like the old stories about the morgue that never quite closed. I had always been a skeptic. I told myself it was just the building settling, the natural fluctuations of an old structure. But that was before I met the body in the freezer. It was late one evening around 2:30 a.m. when I was tasked with doing a final check of the cold storage rooms. Most of the morgue had been cleared out, but there were still a few bodies in the old refrigeration units, preserved in time, waiting to be sent to their final resting place. I had a set routine for this job: check the bodies, make sure everything was in order, and report any anomalies. That night, however, the routine was interrupted. I was walking down the narrow hall, the hum of the old freezers echoing in the otherwise dead silence. I stopped in front of the first cold storage unit. As usual, I tapped the glass window to ensure the body inside was properly preserved. It was a simple job, nothing unusual, but then I heard it, a sound, a faint rustling, coming from the unit. I thought maybe it was a shift in the body bag, some disturbance caused by the old refrigeration system, but it didn't stop. It was rhythmic, soft, like someone was breathing. I took a step back, my heart racing in my chest. I had worked in that morgue for months and never heard anything like it. The refrigeration unit should have been silent cold, lifeless, like the rest of the building. But there it was, that faint, eerie sound. And then, it stopped. I forced myself to approach the unit. I couldn't explain it, but I had to see for myself. Slowly, I opened the door. The light inside flickered for a moment, casting an unsettling glow over the figure inside. The body pale, gaunt, and stiff lay perfectly still, just as it should. But something was off, and the body's hands were curled tightly, almost unnaturally so. I looked closer. Its eyes wide open stared back at me. Empty, hollow eyes, as though someone had placed them there to watch. There was no movement, no sign of life, yet the sensation of being watched was overwhelming. I froze, unable to tear my gaze away. It was like the body was waiting for something, waiting for me to do something, to make a mistake, to acknowledge it. My stomach turned, and the hairs on my neck stood up. I stepped back quickly, almost tripping over my feet. My flashlight flickered. Then, I heard it again, soft, almost inaudible, the whisper of a voice, so faint I couldn't tell if I was imagining it. Leave ... Now, I shook my head, dismissing it as nerves. The morgue had been closed for years, and the building had been through hell. It was just my mind playing tricks on me. But as I turned to leave, I felt something, a presence. The air had changed cold, thick with an energy I couldn't explain. The door to the cold storage unit slammed shut behind me, louder than I had expected. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't stick around to investigate. I rushed through the narrow hallways, my footsteps echoing off the cracked tiles. I could feel the walls closing in, the building pressing down on me. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, but I couldn't understand them. They weren't just in my head anymore. They were all around me, brushing against my ears, tugging at my thoughts. Don't leave. The air seemed to press in on me, like the building itself was alive, watching, waiting for me to make the wrong move. I finally reached the elevator, my hands slick with sweat. I hit the button repeatedly, but nothing happened. The elevator didn't move. I turned to the stairwell, but it too had changed. The hallway had shifted, like the building was reconfiguring itself, warping the layout into something I didn't recognize. A sudden, sharp sound broke the silencer metallic screech that sent me stumbling backward. I looked around, panic rising in my chest. There, in the corner of the room, a figure stood. I couldn't make out any features at first, but I could feel it. The figure was watching me, waiting. Its presence was heavy, suffocating. Without thinking, I bolted down the hall toward the nearest exit. My breath was ragged, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers followed me, growing louder with each step. Stay with us. I reached the door, shoved it open, and stumbled out into the parking lot, gasping for air. I didn't look back. That night, I didn't sleep. The whispers followed me, even in the safety of my own home. I could hear them, in the dark, just beyond my reach, telling me I hadn't finished my job, that I had left something behind. The next morning, I tried to return to the morgue, to clear my mind, to prove to myself that it had all been a trick of my senses. But when I arrived, the building was different. The doors were sealed, the windows had been boarded up, the entrance blocked by a heavy chain. The place looked abandoned in a way it hadn't before. And then I noticed something that chilled me to the bone. The Morgues refrigeration unit. One I had checked the night before was no longer there. It had disappeared, like it had never existed. The building was empty, but I knew better now. Some places don't stay abandoned. Some places, once you step inside, they don't let you leave. And some but never rest. The morgue had been abandoned for years, but it was still a familiar sight in the small town. The building was once a center for the community, a place where families grieved their loved ones, and the town's law enforcement relied on the morgue's services for investigations. Now, it was just another forgotten structure, left to decay in silence. Its once gleaming white walls had yellowed with age, and the once polished floors were now covered in dust and grime. No one ever dared to speak about it much. Not anymore. But everyone knew. Everyone remembered. I had always been drawn to the abandoned and forgotten places, and after months of hearing whispers about the old morgue, I knew I had to explore it. The stories I had heard weren't the typical tales of ghosts and restless spirits. There were no rumors of flickering lights or creaking floors. No, this place had a different kind of reputation. A reputation of unease. A strange feeling that clung to it, even after it had been abandoned. And I was going to find out why. I arrived at the morgue late one evening, just as the sun began to dip behind the hills. The building stood in isolation at the edge of town, surrounded by a few scattered trees, their branches swaying in the wind. As I walked closer, I could feel the weight of the place pressing down on me. It was more than just an old, run-down building. There was something about it. The way the air seemed heavier, the way the shadows seemed darker. The entrance was boarded up, as expected, but it didn't stop me. I had researched the layout of the building, and I knew where the maintenance tunnel was located. It was small, hidden behind the back of the morgue. It had once been used for supplies, but now it was the perfect way in. I crawled through the tunnel, the walls slick with mold and rot, and emerged in the back hallway of the morgue. The faint smell of something sour lingered in the air, but I had expected that. I switched on my flashlight and made my way through the corridors, the beam cutting through the pitch black. The sound of my footsteps echoed eerily as I walked deeper into the building, but there was no sign of anything out of place. Not yet. The first thing I noticed was the temperature. The morgue was cold, but it wasn't just the chill of an old building without heating. It was an unnatural cold, the kind that makes your breath catch in your throat, like something is watching you. I shook it off and continued, my heart starting to race as I approached the door to the autopsy suite. It was locked, of course, but that was nothing new. I had expected it. I fumbled around in my bag for my tools, and within seconds, I had the door open. The room inside was like something out of a nightmare-old surgical tables. Metal instruments strewn about, and faded tiles covered in layers of dust. But it was what I saw in the corner that made my blood run cold. A body lying on the table, covered by a white sheet. The body was still and lifeless, just like it should be. But something about it felt wrong and natural. I took a step closer, my breath shallow in my chest, and I pulled back the sheet. What I saw made my stomach twist. The body was fresh. It hadn't been here for years, like everything else in the morgue. The skin was still pale, but there was no sign of decomposition. The face was almost too perfect to still. I leaned closer, my flashlight shaking in my hand, and that's when I saw it. A small smile curled at the edges of the lips. It wasn't natural. It was as though the body had been positioned that way on purpose, as if it were waiting for something or someone. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped even further, and the air became thick with something I couldn't explain. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. But before I could step back, I heard it. A sound, soft, almost imperceptible. A low whisper, like someone speaking directly into my ear. I froze, my body stiff with fear. My eyes darted around the room, but I saw nothing. No one. The body on the table was still, its smile unnerving in its unnatural perfection. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me, as though the building itself had decided I wasn't leaving. So, panic surged through me as I rushed toward the door, slamming my shoulder against it. It wouldn't budge. I've pounded on it with my fists, but nothing happened. The air around me grew heavier, suffocating. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, until it felt as though the very walls were closing in on me. Stay, with us, I could feel the floor beneath me trembling, a deep, resonating hum that seemed to come from the very bones of the building. The walls seemed to shift, elongating, as if the morgue itself was alive, changing to trap me inside. I stumbled back, my flashlight flickering, and that's when I saw it, a shadow in the corner, shifting and twisting like smoke. It was tall, humanoid in shape, but its features were obscured. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its presence. It was watching me, waiting for me to make the wrong move. Without thinking, I turned and ran. But the hallway was different now. The walls were no longer the same. The door I had entered through was gone, replaced by solid concrete. The building had shifted, trapping me in a labyrinth with no way out. I ran and ran, the whispering voices chasing me down every corridor, down every dead-end hallway. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, until it felt like they were inside my head. "You shouldn't have come," they hissed. "Now you're one of us." I don't know how long I wandered through that twisted place. My sense of time had completely left me. I only knew one thing. I had to get out. I don't remember how I found my way back to the entrance, but I must have. I stumbled through the maintenance tunnel once again, my legs shaking with exhaustion. When I finally emerged into the night air, I didn't look back. I couldn't. I don't know if it was the morgue or something far older, but something inside that building had woken up. I haven't returned to that place since. But sometimes, when the wind is just right, I can still hear the whispers of far away, but unmistakable. And when I close my eyes, I see that body on the table, the small, twisted smile still haunting me, waiting for someone else to walk in. Some buildings don't just trap you in their walls, they trap you in your mind. And once they've had you, they never let go. The first time I stepped into the morgue, I wasn't expecting much. I had been to 100 other abandoned places before: warehouses, asylums, schools, hospitals, so this should have been just another job for me. But something about this place felt different. It was as though it was waiting for me, biding its time until it could reveal its secrets. The old county morgue, shut down in the early 2000s, had been forgotten by most. The hospital it had been a part of had long been repurposed, but the morgue, tucked away in the basement, had been sealed off and left to rot. I had heard rumors about it over the years, stories from the locals about strange noises coming from the building, of late-night whispers echoing through the halls. But those were just stories, right? I had come alone. I always did. It wasn't my first time exploring abandoned places. I had a reputation for being able to get in and out without a trace, without disturbing anything. I had my gear, flashlight, camera, and my trusty gloves. No one was going to stop me. I pushed through the rusted door with ease and stepped into the morgue. The first thing that hit me was the cold. I had expected it to be musty and damp, but this was different, like a cold that sank into your bones. The stale air of the morgue seemed almost alive, hanging heavy around me, thick with the scent of decay. It wasn't overpowering, but it was enough to make my throat tighten. My flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the rows of cold storage units empty now, save for the occasional forgotten body bag that had been left behind. I wandered through the facility, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the concrete floors. It was eerily quiet, but not silent. There was a hum, an undercurrent of sound that I couldn't quite place, like something was vibrating beneath the surface, waiting to be heard. I found my way to the old autopsy room, and that's when it started to feel wrong. The room was still intact, but something about the air was different. It was heavier, charged, like static before a storm. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, but I ignored it. I was here to document, not to get scared. I stepped into the room, and that's when I saw it. A body, not on a table, but on the floor. It was an older man, his skin pale and stretched tight over his bones. He was lying on his back, his hands folded neatly across his chest. There was no identification tag, no label, nothing to indicate who he was or why he had been left here. Just a body, perfectly preserved, lying still in the dim light. But that wasn't the most unsettling part. His eyes were wide open. I don't know what came over me, but I couldn't look away. It was as though those eyes were staring directly at me, watching me, waiting for something. For a moment, I felt a chill grip my spine, and then the sound came. A whisper. It was faint at first, too soft for me to make out the words. But as the seconds stretched into what felt like hours, the whisper grew louder, clearer. It was coming from the man on the floor. Leave. I froze. My pulse skipped, and a cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I turned quickly, scanning the room, expecting anyone to be there. But I was alone. The whisper came again, louder this time. Leave now. My heart raced as I took a step back. The voice, it wasn't just a sound. It was a presence. It filled the room, pressing down on me, heavy and oppressive. The walls seemed to close in around me, the air thick with an unnatural pressure. I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, it slammed shut in front of me. The room plunged into darkness. The flashlight flickered violently before dying completely. I stood there, paralyzed, the darkness closing in around me. The only sound was the low hum that seemed to reverberate through the walls, coming from deep within the morgue. It was like the building itself was alive, breathing, shifting. I fumbled through my bag for a spare flashlight, my hands shaking. And as soon as the beam of light illuminated the room again, I saw it. The body on the floor was gone. I rushed to the spot where it had been, but the floor was empty. No trace of the man, no body, nothing. And then I heard the whisper again, coming from behind me. Not yet. I spun around, and that's when I saw it. The reflection in the cracked mirror on the wall. It wasn't my own reflection. It was the man from the floor, standing just behind me, his hollow eyes fixed on me. his body contorted in an unnatural position, like he had been twisted into place by some unseen force. I screamed, but the sound caught in my throat as I stumbled backward. I tried to run, but the room had changed. The walls had shifted, the hallways had morphed into something unfamiliar. It felt like the building itself had a will, a desire to trap me within its decaying walls. I scrambled toward the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. But as I reached the bottom step, I felt it again, the weight of those eyes on me. I turned just in time to see the figure of the man standing at the top of the stairs, watching me, his mouth curled into a twisted smile. I didn't look back. I bolted toward the exit, my legs carrying me faster than I thought possible. I didn't stop until I was outside, gulping in the cold night air, my heart still racing in my chest. I didn't look back at the morgue. I didn't have to. I knew it was watching me. I knew the building, the body, the whisper, they were waiting for me to return. The next morning I went back to the morgue, but it was gone. The building was completely demolished, rubble where the walls once stood. I searched the area for hours, but there was nothing left, not even the foundation. And yet, every night, when I close my eyes, I can still hear the whisper, not yet. Some places aren't meant to be explored. Some places ... And once you've crossed their threshold, they'll never let you leave. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Each of your stories adds another layer to our growing community of horror enthusiasts. And if you think someone else might enjoy a good scare, do not forget to share this video with them. Stay tuned for more spine-chilling stories, and remember, sometimes the scariest tales are the ones that could happen to any of us. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video if you dare.